Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and ladies and gentlemen, we have made it. We are so close to the Super Bowl, the last game of the NFL 2025 to 2026 season. But before we jump into all of the goodness that has happened over the past week for the Eagles, for the NFL as a whole, I would like to ask you guys to leave a like and subscribe down below. You guys are going to be getting 2 episodes this week. One tonight when this releases, and one Saturday night as well. So, if y'all could leave a like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Your support goes a long way, and it never goes unnoticed. Alright, so this episode might be on the shorter side of things, only because I have 2 episodes coming out. This one's going to be more general, and the next episode is going to be more Super Bowl specific. So if you're looking for my Super Bowl prediction, what I think is going to happen, Super Bowl MVP, you guys are going to have to wait till Saturday. I'm sorry to keep you on bated breath, but just stick with me. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. In other news, we're going to be covering a lot of the NFL award predictions that I have for tomorrow, and going over who I thought would win them at the start of the season. And then we're also going to take a look at the last few head coaching hirings that have happened, and the offensive coordinator hiring that happened for the Eagles. And let's just say the guy that I wanted to win it last week won it. So let's jump right into things. We'll wrap up some of these head coaching hiring, shall we? So the Cleveland Browns hired former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken for their head coaching opening. This pissed off their defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz pretty badly, who was actively trying to become the new head coach of the team to keep some consistency around this championship caliber defense. Monken will build an efficient offense and most likely will decide who's the future at the quarterback position, whether that be Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, or somebody that's not on their roster currently. Taking a look at it, this is probably one of the better options for the Browns. Their defense has been one of their staples for the past 5 years, and so if they can somehow convince Schwartz to come back and be their defensive coordinator and allow Monken to use his experience and his high-powered offense to generate some points for this team, maybe they can become a contender in the AFC North. Currently, Pittsburgh is going to be going through a pretty in-depth rebuild. They say that they won't, but they most likely will. The Ravens are going to have to get their footing under a new head coach for the first time in a long time, so they're going to have to readjust. Bengals are a complete mess every single season, with Joe Burrow constantly getting injured at the start of the season and barely finishing out the season. And so when it comes down to it, the AFC North is going to become one of the most interesting divisions moving forward because it's going to be the most open. Any of these teams, if they can kind of shape themselves into some form of a contender, they're going to be able to take over their own division. So bringing in a guy that knows this division like Monken, as well as he does, allows them to kind of adjust and bring in a scheme that will help them work towards their goals. Overall, the Browns, it's a smart move. Schwartz, I trust as a defensive coordinator, not sure as a head coach, not sure what kind of culture he would bring into the Browns building that wasn't already there. And so bringing in Monken is a smart move in a sense that it gives us something new to look at for the Browns. Next up, the weakest head coaching hiring in this entire cycle being the Cardinals hiring Mike LaFleur, former Rams offensive coordinator. Why do I believe it's one of the weaker ones? Well, we don't know too much about... Oh, is that meant to be Matt LaFleur? Wait, is it Mike LaFleur? Mike LaFleur. No, it is Mike LaFleur. I was right. Mike, it's hard to say. He's had quite a few years of coaching experience. Obviously, he worked with the Browns, Falcons, 49ers, Jets, Rams, and Cardinals. So he's only really seen any form of success with the 49ers and the Rams. Oh, no, sorry, my apologies, with the Falcons as well. So he's worked under Shanahan and McVay. Both systems are very high-powered offense, which is the opposite direction of what the Cardinals were looking to do with their last head coach. So it does bring up the question of what is he going to do next for this franchise. The question is whether Kyler Murray is going to get traded. If he does, that's cool. Who do you bring in as quarterback? You can't just throw out Jacoby Brissett and tell him to throw 50 times per game and think that you're going to be able to contend for the division. That's not how it works. And in a Shanahan McVay offense, they heavily rely on the play action. So they're going to need a strong run game behind a young, strong running back. Where are they drafting anyway? Sorry. Give me one sec here. Draft position. So they're going to need a top-tier running back. Oh, they're picking number 3 overall. So do not be surprised if and when we start to hear rumors that the Cardinals are heavily interested in that running back free agent and this running back free agent, and that they're interested in drafting Jeremiah Love as well at number 3. So that's just what the system that Mike LaFleur is going to bring over calls for. And so no matter who they have at quarterback, they need to have a good running back that can be feared by the defense. So we'll see how they come up with that. But this, to me, is the weakest hire in the entire head coaching cycle. And that doesn't mean it's the worst, but it's currently the weakest so far. The last head coaching hiring that we're going to talk about here is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders announced that they are going to hire the Seahawks offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, to become their next head coach after the Super Bowl. Obviously, any coach that is currently under contract with a team in the Super Bowl can't sign with a new team till after the Super Bowl. Same thing happened with Kellen Moore last year. And so, with that being said, Kubiak has had a long history of being a positions coach with a lot of different teams, being a passing game coordinator with a lot of different teams, and being an offensive coordinator as well with a few different teams. The Seahawks have had a top-tier offense under his watch, and he is considered to be one of the young offensive minds in recent years, giving him a high chance of succeeding at the Raiders. The Raiders overall have quite a few questions to ask. Who's their quarterback of the future? How can they build up a good offensive line and defensive line moving forward? Because, as Tom Brady knows, the Super Bowl is won in the trenches. And so if you can't win on defense and you can't win on offensive lines, then you can't win at all. And so, obviously, Super Bowl 59 was a big indicator of that. But overall, the Raiders have to find a way to build around, most likely, Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 overall pick. And they're going to have to find a way to use guys like Brock Bowers and Ashton Yenti to their full ability. They're also going to need a top-tier wide receiver. They don't really have a guy ever since they traded Jacoby Myers to the Jaguars, and so they're going to need a guy that they can call their number 1 moving forward. And for a young rookie quarterback to rely on when it matters most. So, with all that being said, all the head coaching jobs have been filled up. Obviously, I told you the weakest, but who do I think is the strongest head coaching hiring for a team? And that, to me, is probably the Giants with John Harbaugh. He was one of the first guys off the board. He's the best head coach on the board. And so that does leave a couple other head coaches or former head coaches like Sean McDermott out there ready for the next cycle. Or maybe he takes a step back and does an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator role, depending on how he's feeling. And so we're going to probably see guys like McDermott come back into the cycle next year. Obviously, same thing happened with Mike McCarthy. He got too late into this merry-go-round that is the head coaching cycle. And so that only really left a coordinator role for him, so he stuck around until next year. Once the Pittsburgh Steelers job opened, he signed. And so moving forward, I think the Giants, Ravens, and and honestly Titans have signed their best head coaches. The weakest to me have definitely been the Dolphins, Steelers, and Cardinals. But we're going to have to wait and see how these guys start to build around their teams, who these teams keep and who they allow to go in free agency. So we're just going to have to stick around till around March 16th, to see who comes and who goes for a lot of these teams. Next up, we have the Eagles' offensive coordinator search is finally over. Sean Mannion ended up as the Eagles' offensive coordinator, as I said he would likely do last week. Mannion's system is far from anything Sirianni is used to, and he will likely bring in his own guys. Who that is, that's a harder question to say, but he's definitely going to do a good search for it. Mannion, the reason why I trust him is all the different systems that he played in as a backup quarterback and the system that he coached in as well. He played under Sean McVay, Kevin Stefanski, Clint Kubiak, Drew Petzing, Dave Canales, Kevin O'Connell, Grant Ondetsky, and Matt LaFleur he coached under for 2 years. Let's see. McVay, head coach. Stefanski, head coach. Kubiak, head coach. Petzing, not a head coach. Canales, head coach. O'Connell, head coach. Ondetsky had a chance to be a head coach this season, but turned it down to return to the Ravens. And obviously LaFleur was the head coach of the Packers. So the thing that all these head coaches kind of said about Mannion was that even during his playing time, he looked at being a quarterback from a coach's perspective. And so he came in, he absorbed all the knowledge he could, and then once it was time to move on, he moved on and did the same thing with the next system. He did the same thing with the next system. So as he got traded around, yes, he did get traded, but he still had a chance to see all these different systems in play. Yes, this is a guy that doesn't have any coaching experience. I know. Everybody wanted Nate Scheelhaus or somebody else. But ultimately, this is the guy that I felt the most comfortable bringing in to develop Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, if you're watching the Pro Bowl like I was last night, threw 3 touchdowns as a third-string quarterback. So, what does that tell you? But anyway, Mannion has many different position coaches that need a new coach. Now, not all of these are vacant yet, but these are coaching positions that I believe will need to be filled or will need to be replaced. Wide receivers coach, run game coordinator, QB's coach, tight end coach, and a position that was already filled was passing game coordinator. This spot has already been filled by former Buccaneers offensive coordinator Josh Gizzard, who was also one of the finalists for the job. Gizzard will most likely come in and advise Mannion as well. And all the people were kind of moaning and groaning about Gizzard. And yes, I didn't want him to be offensive coordinator, but I don't mind him sticking around either, because the rumor is that The offense really wasn't his problem down in Tampa Bay. There was too many egos kind of clashing in the locker room, which ended up costing them majorly. And so giving Gizzard a shot here as passing game coordinator and as like an advisor to Mannion is an amazing prospect in my eyes. Maybe Gizzard works his way up the ranks and eventually becomes an offensive coordinator somewhere else. Maybe he proves himself as a important piece to a new Eagles offense. And maybe he ends up becoming offensive coordinator if Mannion doesn't work out. But we're going to have to wait and see on that end. The other major news, I believe I mentioned last week that Adam Schefter went on 97.5, and in the final 10 seconds dropped the bomb that there would be other major news outside of offensive coordinator dropping this week for the Eagles, and that would be the possibility of Vic Fangio retiring. This is probably not going to happen, but it's not 100% certain right now. If the Eagles really didn't believe that Fangio would return, they would have barred Christian Parker from becoming the Cowboys defensive coordinator job because Christian Parker was Fangio's disciple. It is believed right now that he will return as of late last week, but we still need to find a successor to Fangio real soon. The only problem is that we've tried Fangio's defense without Fangio. A lot of places have. Obviously, I'll give you guys the best example. 2023, Sean Desai is our defensive coordinator. He is a Fangio disciple. He came right off of Fangio's coaching tree, and we brought him in because we wanted that scheme to pair with our offense. And we all know how well that worked. And that's been the same case for a lot of different places across the NFL that have tried that same formula. You need Fangio to make it work. Players respect him, players like him, and players give their all for him. Same thing, coaches underneath him respect him and squeeze the most out of their players that they can. And so finding a replacement for Fangio for his system, I don't believe is going to work. We're going to need to bring in a guy that is different. We're going to need to bring in a guy that has experience and a guy that is willing to coach up a team without having respect from that team yet. And so we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out probably next offseason if Fangio does not stick around, but hopefully we keep Fangio after just 2 seasons. Sorry, I was reading some new pop-up information for the Eagles, but it's not important. Anywho, some NFL it got announced the international game schedule. There will be 9 international games this upcoming season, which is insane to me. Let me just put that out there. The NFL doing this many international games in a single season proves to me that Goodell is pushing for a single international game every single week. And I feel like probably by 2035, we might see close to an international game every single week besides the, they've already done a game in opening week. But I believe that there wouldn't be a international game in the last week of the season. With all that crap out of the way, let's hop into what games they have. Obviously, London. They're going to London 3 times. Now, I wish it was London twice and Ireland once. That would be cool. But they're going to London 3 times. They're going back to Munich. Obviously, last year they were in Berlin, Germany. They're going back to Munich, which they did for 2 years straight back in 2023 and 2024. And both games were, it might have been 3 years, because Tom Brady did that back in 2022 as well. So 3 years straight, before this past season. Munich has continued to turn up with large crowds, similar to London. So these are two solid bases in Europe for NFL games. I'm going to do all the returning cities, and then we'll do the new cities. Madrid, they're going back to Madrid. That game was highly profitable, even though it did not have good teams. They got a high attendance number from the Spaniards, and it will be interesting to see if they're able to build a base in Spain, similar to London and Germany. So, for the 4 new cities getting a international game, let's go back to a country that has had a game for the past 2 seasons, that being Brazil. But instead of being in Sao Paulo, it will be in Rio de Janeiro. And Rio, I believe Rio is the capital of Brazil. Yeah, Rio de Janeiro is the capital of Brazil, so they will finally be getting their first NFL game. And I would expect this to be a massive market for the NFL for the next half a decade to build up in. Next up, we have the return to Mexico City. Mexico City has not had a NFL game in a long time, since the 2010s. And so it's nice to see the NFL throw Mexico City back into their slate of games. And logistics-wise, it's one of the easiest to kind of pull off. Next up, we have a NFL game being played in Paris, France. Paris used to have their own team in the Europe, so we'll go over that after all this, but they used to have their own team. Paris would be an interesting spot to build up an NFL headquarters in as well. It's in the center of London, Madrid, and Munich, so it would create an easy hub for the NFL to build out of to stretch across Europe. We're just going to have to wait and see what kind of numbers they pull in, but they already have the New Orleans Saints. That's kind of on the nose, guys. Obviously, France owned Louisiana at one point, but for you history nerds out there, you guys already knew that. And so that one's kind of on the nose, but we'll have to wait and see what team goes to Paris to play the Saints. And then we also have the most interesting, and who I think they're going to put the Eagles in, is Melbourne, Australia. Australia brings up the biggest question mark and the biggest problem for me. It's not near any of the other cities, and it's I forget how many hours. I knew people that actually did the trek over to Australia once, and it's a lot of hours. Is the game worth playing there? No, in my opinion, but they're getting a lot of Australian and Samoan players from Australia and that region. So advertising themselves kind of makes sense. Overall, I think that Melbourne will probably be switched for Sydney over the next couple of years, but we're going to have to wait and see. And so what I was alluding to earlier is that it seems like the NFL is rebuilding their stranglehold on the European continent like they had during the 90s, when they ran their own European, I think it was the United European Football League, the UEFL, which, it had several teams from London, Paris, from a couple different parts of Germany. Hell, I even think Spain had their own team as well. So it brings up an interesting point that they're rebuilding that hub in France, which is a team that really won a lot of those championships and allowed them to spread their influence easily across Europe, because France is right there in the middle. And so we're going to have to wait and see whether they continue to do a Paris game moving forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing a partnership between Paris and the NFL moving forward. All right, so that was kind of all the news I wanted to talk about. But what I want to talk about are the upcoming NFL awards, which are happening Thursday, February 5th. And so I'm kind of just going to jump right into it. I'm going to give you my pick who I thought, and then I'll give you the pick of who I think is actually going to win it. Who I thought before the season start, we're going to start a little bit simpler. We're going to go Coach of the Year. Who I thought would win Coach of the Year was Mike Vrabel, and who will most likely win Coach of the Year is Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel has taken this team from I forget, it was like maybe 4-13, and taken them all the way to the Super Bowl. Not many times do first-year head coaches do that with a franchise, and I just think that he was able to build them up into this contender using his philosophy, his mentality, and ultimately he created an amazing contender, which is unfortunate to say. Next up, we have Comeback Player of the Year. I had Christian McCaffrey, and wouldn't I be damned if it's most likely going to be Christian McCaffrey. All the sports betting sites have him heavily favored as well. So Christian McCaffrey ultimately was able to pick up where he left off after being injured for almost all of the 2024 season. And so McCaffrey will win Comeback Player of the Year, as I predicted at the beginning of the season. Where it starts to get more interesting. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I had Travis Hunter. Now, Travis Hunter was injured for most of the season. And so who do I have winning it now? I have Seattle Seahawks safety Nick Emenwardier winning this award due to the fact that his defense was top tier. And with the only other guys being like Carson oh boy, it's too early for that name. Carson Schlesinger and James Pierce being the only other competition for Emenwardier. I just think that Emenwardier helped juice up this defense and played a major part in the reason why it was top tier and why they shut down so many people, especially in the passing game. So I think Nick Emenwardier would be your safe bet if you're betting on this to be your Defensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I had Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty did not even crack, it seems like, the top 6. So who do I have winning? I have Panthers wide receiver Terrell McMillan. McMillan kind of outdid the rest of his competition. Jackson Dart, too injured. Tyler Shuck got off to too much of a slow start. Trevion Henderson, although he's helped bring his team to the Super Bowl, was not the reason why they're in it. And so McMillan, to me, just helped bring that Panthers offense to what they could have been and help them show that they can make the playoffs and help them show that Bryce Young isn't just a mediocre quarterback. He has his moments. He just needs weapons around him. And so I feel like McMillan has kind of locked up Offensive Rookie of the Year moving forward and will ultimately seal it up tomorrow night. Defensive Player of the Year, I had Aiden Hutchinson coming into this year. Apparently, he didn't even crack the top 6. But we all know, if you know the sport of football and you know what was happening, we all know who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, that being Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett set the sack record. He is favored by minus 20,000 and minus 10,000, depending on where you go on different sports betting sites. And the next closest person was Micah Parsons at plus 900. So I'd much rather take Myles Garrett to be Defensive Player of the Year. He broke the record, and there's not really much for me to talk about. Offensive Player of the Year. I had Amon-Ra St. Brown being the Offensive Player of the Year, which was kind of a bold move for me to do when I could have taken a guy like Puka Nacua or Bijan Robinson to be the top guy. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown did not have that great of a season. Come on. He did. He's not even listed on the sports betting sites. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown ultimately fell flat of my offensive player of the year. So, who do I think is going to win it? Now, I think it's going to come down between a tight contest between Bijan Robinson, who had over 2,000 yards of 2,000 scrimmage yards, which is receiving and rushing yards, and also Jackson Smith-Njigba, who just had one of the best seasons I've seen from a wide receiver in a long time. I'm going to go with JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, due to the fact that his play took his team to the Super Bowl. His play helped elevate Sam Darnold to the quarterback that he is today. And his play is ultimately the best out of himself, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, or Christian McCaffrey, who are the top four right now. Obviously, Jackson Smith-Njigba is at least minus 1,100 right now, depending on where you go. And the closest person to him I see is Puka Nacua at plus 750 on FanDuel. So, to me, Jackson Smith-Njigba is a safer bet here, and he's also more likely to win it due to the fact that his play just elevated his team to the next level, that being the Super Bowl. And obviously, my MVP pick was Jalen Hurts. Every year I'm going to pick some Eagles player to make one of these awards, or Eagles coach. Vic Fangio is up for assistant of the year, offensive or deep coaching assistant of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that he wins that tomorrow night, but he probably won't be there because he mainly doesn't care. Anyway, moving on. Obviously, I picked Jalen Hurts for MVP. He is not in the top. No, he's up there. Some places have him at plus 2,200, or plus, the most I see is plus 3,500. So, I think it's kind of obvious who's going to win MVP this year. Obviously, a lot of people were trying to make it up that it was a tight race between Matthew Stafford and Drake May, Drake May. So, give me a drum roll, please. I have Matthew Stafford winning the MVP for the NFL 2025 to 2026 season. He played out of his mind, and we don't know how many more years that he has left realistically, and he continues. Almost every single game was a top-tier game with only a couple slip-ups from him. And so Stafford really has kind of earned this. He was one of the most efficient with the ball this year. He was one of the most explosive quarterbacks with the ball this year. Not running-wise, passing-wise. And so I just think that he edged out Drake May, who's kind of been a little bit quieter in this back half of the season. Obviously, MVP is supposed to be regular season, but everybody knows that postseason plays a factor in it as well. So I just think that Matthew Stafford is going to walk away with his first MVP award of his career. This late in his career, that's kind of impressive. Alright, so that's kind of it for this episode. Like I said, there's going to be a second episode talking all about the Super Bowl, going over more of the X's and O's of how the Seahawks can win and how the Patriots can win as well. Obviously, last year I mainly just did how the Eagles can win because that's all I really cared about. This season, I can be a little bit more bipartisan, and I can give you all my predictions moving forward. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this NFL season. Moving forward, we're going to change up some of the scheduling stuff, but we'll talk about that next week, and we'll worry about that later down the line. I've been your host, Matt, and it has been a pleasure talking to you throughout the 2025 to 2026 season. And until next time, remember, go Birds.